Hello and welcome back. You have reached the Space Between Ideas YouTube channel. I am Blaine Gates. So we have been talking and talking and talking for 100, well, we're on day 44 of a 101-day marathon, 101 themes so that you can think more clearly about your business. Now, the whole idea behind this book, Create Crucial Insight, by Dr. Thomas Buchholz, is that you want to think well and do great. Now, to think well and to do great, you should be using the direct outcomes checklists. Now, each of the direct outcomes checklists have like five or six, sometimes as many as 9 themes. So, as you learn these themes, it's kind of like going through like a large mansion. All right, so if you think of business or the concepts, business concepts as like boxes. All right, so remember watching the YouTube video where there was a guy, he was talking about how men think. He said men basically pull out a box and then they do whatever's in that box. And then when they're done thinking about that box, they put the box back in. And women, they have like wires that are all attached with each other. And like if you touch one side, somehow it attaches to all these other emotions and things. And then he said that the craziest box of all was the nothing box. So men can actually just sit there and do nothing, which apparently women are not able to do. And I don't know what or why, but he's got millions of views. So apparently people think that it's interesting that he talks like that. Now, these themes, these checklists, you can think of them as boxes, all right? And if you could even think of it even more like a mansion or a house. So if you have like 10 different rooms inside of this big house, and you can walk into each room and you can start thinking about the different parts of each room. Like imagine that you were going to buy a house and you had an agent that was walking you through the house and they were showing you the different parts of the room. And they said, okay, so here's the door, here's the wallpaper, here's the ceiling, these are the lights, here's the carpet, here's the electricity goes through the house, here's how the water works. And basically, they're just explaining to you what is in the room. And sometimes, like, especially if you are really experienced in business, you're going to be business. If you are like a builder, a home builder, and you're looking at this home, you don't really need the person to like go through each of the individual steps because it's like, yeah, I get it. I have a few specific questions that I would like to know more about. Okay, so there's a few lights that we need to turn on in that house for me to really understand the situation about what's going on in that house because in general, I understand. That's the same thing with these checklists. So if you have a lot of experience, so I've had quite a few people that I've worked with who have a lot of business experience. And usually what happens is they're like, yeah, duh, obviously, uh-huh. And then it's like very, very rare that all of a sudden they're like, oh, yeah. So it'll be like they walk into a room, which is for them, it's mostly lit, and they can see most of what's in the room. And sometimes there's just one little area where maybe they have like an emotional attachment to some experience, which prohibits them or stops them from. It's like a blind spot. They can't really see that spot. And then going through these checklists, going through these themes helps them to just expand the light into all the areas of that box. And then as we go through all of the checklists, then we'll be able to expand that light until you have a huge network, a whole structure of thinking within your mind about how to think about business. So at times you may be watching a video like, duh, like I get it, okay, whatever. And then other times you're like, whoa, okay, that really hit me. Now I suggest that you watch all the videos because it's like, when you're watching a movie, they have a storyline. So basically the story is building and building and building, and then you get the first climax and it goes down and it gets kind of boring again. There's always that little period of like, oh, it's kind of boring right now. Like there's that one, but the thing is like by giving you different emotions, they can actually increase the emotion in other ways. Like if you feel a little bit bored and then they start and like this at a lower area, then sometimes they're able to make that climax even higher. So hopefully you're going through all of these checklists one by one. You can also obviously you can go through them like according to themes that you're interested in. But sometimes having that structure in your mind, like especially if you go step by step, it'll help you to understand like how it all fits together. Now, today's an interesting day because we are going to be talking about this really interesting topic. Remember, yesterday we were looking at this board. So, we were doing nil. We talked about haphazard. We talked about experimenting with the process. Then eventually we had a process. And then, so yesterday was the $10,000 question. How can we achieve more results with our current amount of resources? How can we use one process and get more results? All right, so go back to yesterday's video, review the $10,000 question about being how to do things embeddedly. But today is the magic day, right? So today is the $1 million question. Now, can you imagine a $1 million question? All right, so what is it? Like maybe you were looking at it yesterday and you thought like maybe I didn't finish drawing it properly. But look, so this theme is called Effortless. And what is the magic of this box? As you can see, you achieve the result, but there is no action. There's no behavior. This is called effortless. This is like what? Transcending needing and doing. You no longer need, you no longer do, and you're still achieving those results. Isn't that amazing? So what does it really mean? Well, let's do a little bit of a review. All right, so let's characterize the doing of work. So the first one is like, let's characterize work styles. So you can have like work styles, for example, teamwork. You have other work styles, for example, like how you actually do work. So when you're looking at your team, how does your team do work? How would you characterize the way that your team does work? Would you say that they do work appropriately? So you can pick a style. Probably your team is not doing work effortlessly. Maybe they're doing work haphazardly. And is their current work style appropriate or inappropriate? Next, you look at the way they are, like, so there's teamwork, the way they work together, and then you can characterize also work, the way they're actually doing work. So the way that people are specifically doing work, are they doing work appropriately or inappropriately? Next, you can talk about goals or attributes of work cultures. So when you look at your work culture as a whole, would you say that your work culture is haphazard? Would you say that you generally follow a process? Are you currently experimenting with a process? Is the work culture in general experimentative? Are you guys like always like just doing crazy things haphazardly? Or do you follow a process very specifically? Or are you a tech company and slowly you're able to move to effortless? What is an effortless? What does it actually mean at the end of the day? So you also have attitudes about type of work. So for example, like what are the attitudes of people when they are actually doing work? Do they like to do that work or do they not like to do that work? Do they like to work as they experiment with processes or do they not like experimenting with processes? Do they like when you throw something at them haphazardly or do they not like when you throw something at them haphazardly? So those are things that you can start to evaluate. You can take a piece of paper and actually write down like work styles. What is the work style of our teamwork? What is the work style of our work individually? What are our goals? What are our attributes at work and our work culture? What are the attitudes that people have toward different types of work? Now, effortless, how do we really go to effortless, right? So like I haven't actually talked about this $1 million question yet. The $1 million question, how do you make it unnecessary to do, bracket this work, close bracket? All right, so you can actually write down some types of work that you want to make it unnecessary to do. And then maybe figure out like, all right, so if you're a researcher, for example, and you can build a database and automate that database, then at some point there are certain types of behaviors as you build up that process that eventually you will not have to do, but yet you get the result. How about if you are teaching these themes? All right, so me, like, right, what am I doing right now? So why am I making these videos? Obviously, like I'm following a process, right? And then what's next? Okay, so after the video has been uploaded, I can embed the videos into my lessons. So I can talk to a customer or a person and say, hey, why don't you watch this video? And then we can discuss that video. And then for 15 minutes, you watch the video, you come back to the class, and you'll have a much deeper understanding without me having to explain it to you during the time when we're actually having our lesson. So that's like what? That's embedded. All right. Now, for other people, like for me, I mean, to some degree, for me, that work style could be effortless because I've already created these videos. What about if I'm able to create some kind of software program or some kind of online course, or maybe marry both together? All right. So I create an online course, and then I create some kind of software, and then I embed these two together. And the process of walking you through this online course and giving you a software platform could possibly actually replace me. So after I've actually created it, then I can sell it and I can continue to make money on these two digital products without having to do this work anymore. All right, so I think one of the interesting things, and one thing I wanted to share from the book, from Tom Buchholz's book, is a story that he often tells. And it's a really great story because, when you think about the legacy that you leave, maybe you created some kind of technology, but then eventually it's gone. Maybe you grew some fruits and vegetables, but eventually people ate them. Maybe what did you do in this world, and how did it last, and how long did it last? So it's actually kind of difficult to make a change in this world which will last for 100 years or 200 years or 1,000 years. So this is from the book Create Crucial Insight. He said that a coalition of city residents influences a city's use of its shoreline, its seashore and parklands. Okay, so at the time, Tom Buchholz was living in California, and I suppose this is somewhere close to Los Angeles. The situation, all right, so the people submit development proposals to the city government. The coalition works against the proposals. Okay, so basically there was like this piece of land, and there were all these business people that were bringing proposals saying, hey, we want to develop this, we want to develop that. They wanted to get permission from the city government. Then suddenly, they built a coalition to work against these proposals. So it says action based on thinking styles. So it says a person suggests that there is no end in sight to such development proposals. Now, this person was actually Tom Buchholz, and at the time, he was a young boy. And he told his father, who was on the coalition, he said, Dad, look, there's no end to sight in such development proposals. The person suggests that the coalition develop and advocate a proposal for a wildlife preserve. All right, so he actually, as a young child, he told his father, who worked for the city, he said, let's create a proposal for a wildlife preserve. Now, what happened was the coalition embraced the new goal, and the coalition's new approach unifies defensive activities, countering other proposals. The proactive activities advocating establishing a preserve. The city establishes a shoreline preserve. All right, so basically what happened is they decided, instead of like always just saying no to all of these different proposals, they decided to put their own proposal in. And the proposal was to create a shoreline preserve. And now the shoreline preserve is available for families for generations to come. Now, what happened as far as work styles? All right, so now it's effortless. This is another example of effortless, where now that you have a shoreline preserve in this area, there's no longer these counter proposals trying to use this land. So they no longer have to deal with this problem anymore. Now, there's other ways that you can do this. Okay, so for example, maybe you are going to train some staff so that as you move up the totem pole at work, you have other people that are doing that job for you. Maybe you created some kind of software, computer. Maybe you created a robot. Maybe you have an assembly line that's fully automized. I mean, look at these fast food restaurants. They're putting in these screens so people can just push some buttons. So they're phasing out these people who used to do these jobs. So as you start to develop your business in the future, I mean, think about how you can bring this principle into some of the other checklists. Okay, so remember, you have the Endeavor Element badge, you have the State Progress badge, you have the State Synergies badge, you have the State Inventiveness badge, you have the State Assumptions badge, and today, oh my goodness, you got the State Styles badge. You have 6 badges. All right, so how do you put Effortless into these other checklists? All right, so for example, well, actually, we've already talked about all these different things. So here you go. Here's your badge. Figure out ways to become effortless. Go through your state styles as frequently as possible and figure out how you can change those styles around. Now, in the next video, we're going to start talking about state impact. Basically, state impact is how you evaluate courses of action. Now, of course, when you're choosing plans, for example, in the state progress checklist, then you're going to have to evaluate courses of action. When you are doing the experiment processes in the state styles checklist, obviously you are going to evaluate the impact of those experiments. Also, when you are doing research for the state assumptions checklist, you're going to have to you have to evaluate like the usefulness and quality of information. And when you are starting to ideate in state inventiveness, you also have to start thinking about the impact of these decisions. So I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. This is Space Between Ideas, and I'm Blank Gates.